Suttle a call. Tim is the sorry about that. Quick ending there. That was
smooth transition.
I was trying to pause. I was trying to drive the volume levels down a little bit, and I got a little jumpy. All right, we're going to give Tim Suttle a call. Tim is the author of the book called The Public Jesus. And on our live radio program, there's no pre-screening, man. We just call people, and bam, they're on the line right now.
If they let out an F-bomb, then it's just
Hello.
Yeah, hey, Tim Suttle, Doug Pagitt, and John Patrick with you.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, man, how are you? Hey, we're live on the show right now. I don't know if I told you
Excellent.
that when we call, I mean, boom, you're just on right now. It's sort of
that's how you roll, huh?
That's how we roll. It's a real game changer around here, I'll tell you. Hey, Tim, thanks so much for being on. I was telling the listeners about all the things that you're into, including your being the front man for Satellite Soul. So we're just listening to one of your tunes.
Yeah, I was listening along online. Oh my gosh!
Oh, you were listening along?
A long time ago.
Well, that's excellent.
That was back when I had hair,
Well, I was noticing that the image that we have of you now and the image then is that an old song? Did we not pick your most current sound?
Oh no, that was actually our very first record. So that's maybe 1997, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you know how I got that is because I looked you up on YouTube and I just played the first video that was there because that's about the amount of work I'm willing to put into
the limit of the effort of labor applied to it.
Well, that's great. So Tim, you've written this book called Public Jesus, and you're trying to engage in a conversation with folks about the role of faith, and especially, I guess, Christian faith in our culture and society. So tell us a bit more about what the book's about.
Yeah, I'm a pastor now at a church, and the other day it was a few months ago, I was taking my kid to school, and out of the blue, he says, why does Barack Obama want to kill babies? Which, almost choked on my coffee. That's not normal on the way to school conversation,
And how old is your brainwashed child?
He's second grade.
Second grade.
Man.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I start kind of probing. This comes from one of his friends, and not really from his friend, but from one of his friend's parents.
Yeah.
And as I just started trying to unpack this, I went home and talked to my wife. I was like, oh my gosh, it's about to start. The presidential election is coming, and we have no idea how to have this conversation. I mean, we barely know how to speak as Christians, period, much less when it comes to politics. And so I started wondering, how can we do this? How can we talk about, because elections are a huge cultural event. If you ignore it in your church, you're missing a huge opportunity.
Yeah, you're just intentionally not paying attention to something, which some churches try to do, of course. But yeah, you're right.
Right.
You're really doing that on purpose. I mean, it's hard to not know what's going on.
Right. And so, my question was, how do we have this in a productive way? And out of that came this book, which is just trying to think about politics as a part of a much bigger conversation about how the Christian engages society in ways that are Christ-like. So in my conviction, in cruciform ways that are not trying to overpower and control, but rather to love and steward and serve, actually, ultimately, and be die for,
Yeah, so it's really not just your book isn't just a conversation, or even primarily a conversation about politics per se, but it's about the role of faith in public life and in a person's public sensibility, and the election really puts a focus on that, because you can't avoid it with your normal set of avoidance tools for people who want to, right?
That's right.
Who don't want to have that.
Exactly right. And not only that, those avoidance tools end up being selective, kind of like selective blindness. We just say, well, we'll hold that over here and not really pay attention to the fact that everything I do is political. Everything I do with my body has political ramifications. It's about how we organize our common lives together. So a trip to the grocery store has political ramifications. I mean, they're buried down there deep, and you have to kind of have to want to see it. But if you pull it out and if you start to examine your life, and that's really what this book is a framework for, is to really think about how it all fits together.
Now,
work, our relationship to time, public speech, politics, all of that.
Now, you write in the book that you were raised in a viewpoint that suggested that you have a religious life that's private, and then you have your own public life. What sort of aha moments led you to write a book about this?
Yeah, it was a long journey, I think, to stop thinking. There are two things I think that are simultaneous shifts. One is away from feeling like a radical individualist, which I sort of think in 200 years when they write history books about this age that I lived my life in, it will be the era of the radical individualist. It's the national religion, individual achievement, and so that had to die first. And then, it was a lot of really smart theologians and folks who spoke into my life, not the least of which was this book called Torture and Eucharist by William Cavanaugh, who is a great Catholic theologian.
Oh, I love that book.
Go ahead.
I love that book.
John's a Catholic. He loves any
phenomenal
Catholic
book. And it really, it's about the Pinochet regime in Chile. It's an amazing book. But what he points out there is that really what most Western societies, if not all societies, would like is for our religion to be personal and private. And so we could just have that in God, and therefore your body can belong to the state.
Huh.
And the state can get you to do, sort of. So we can. It's one way. Stanley Hauerwas says it. He's another influence here. He says we raise our kids to be able to make a decision about whether they're going to be Christians or not, but we don't raise our kids to make a decision whether they're going to be Americans or not. It's not considered.
I see.
You just are, and so. This notion of personal choice is called into question. The notion of what's your primary identity? Are you a Christian first? Are you American first? How does that work? Are you an individual first?
Yeah, and for a lot of people, that's a real mashup, right? Like a lot of people have to mash up sort of their faith and their national identity, and then within their national identity, they're like political identity, or maybe their role in society, and all of that,
right?
And you try to suggest to people some ways some things to consider when they're making that navigation. Is that right?
Actually, what I'm really trying to do is just to make us think about the way we interact with politics right now, especially in this season, because all we've got is bumper sticker stuff.
Yeah, right.
Obama wants to kill babies. No Obama. Or on the other side, some of what Christians say about, Mitt Romney's Mormonism and whatever, the Catholic bishops with Paul Ryan is coming back into focus.
Yeah.
We don't know how to talk about this as Christians. We are so, by and large, and I'm an evangelical. These are my people. It's just, for better or for worse, they're going to have to boot me if they want me out. These are my folks.
They can do that, as it turns out. There actually is
I know this.
There is a meeting at which they do that.
And I hope not. Because I love the evangelical Christian. In fact, this part of why I wrote this book is that evangelicals there's still some of the people who, if they really believe something, they'll actually change the way they live. And that's why I am here and still so connected and enmeshed in the life of the evangelical church, because I think if we could change the way we view the political and especially what it means to be a human being, which is where I really start the book. What does it mean to be human, and what is our role in the creation, its vocation? Why are we here? And then our relationship to one another, to time, to public life, and then especially to politics. If we could transform that, it would radically change the way we do politics, and we do it really poorly right now. We need some help.
So let me ask you a bit about that, because I come from a perspective that would suggest that obviously our politics are a social construct, right? Like the idea that there's Democrats and Republicans. Those are made up categories that are curated by certain communities because they give people meaning at some point in their life. But 300 years ago, there wasn't even a United States, so there were no Democrats and Republicans, right? There might have been people with a more progressive view of the world and a more conservative view of the world, but they weren't divided in those ways. And then 150 years ago, nobody's ever asked me what my relationship to the Federalist Party is, right?
Right.
Because
Are you a Whig?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What are your views on Whig platform? So they're obviously culturally created factors that make it very difficult to deal with them with real substance as a human being, because they're so capricious, right? They're so they're so current day, and they may not be 10 years or 30 years or 100 years from now. So it seems that it's really hard for people in an educated society, for some of us, to heavily commit ourselves to a political track, because we know that the people who curate or narrate that storyline of that track, that it's kind of coming and going. I think that's obvious for people when it comes to religion. I happen to think when it comes to politics, I happen to think it's also true with religion. So I think that religious expression, while there may always be people who are following God and the Jesus narrative, are current categories of what it means to be religious in our day are socially constructed, in my view, right? So what it means, like you said, for someone to be an evangelical, or for someone to be a Catholic, or Mormonism. I mean, these are categories that are really newly defined, and some of them actually newly created in the last 150 years.
Kind of like Copernicium.
Yeah, like the whole notion of this element, right? Mm-hmm. So isn't it difficult isn't one of the difficulties that we face that there's just this awkwardness of these issues are supposed to be so important, but at the same time, we've now looked behind the curtain and we realize, oh yeah, but they're just like made up categories that people use to accomplish some other goal. So should I really worry too much about this stuff? Do you know where I'm coming from? Because I feel like that there's a category of people who just don't give a rat's ass about this stuff. But it's because sometimes it's because they don't care about anybody else, and they're just they just got their head down and they're doing whatever they're doing and they don't really care. But sometimes I wonder if it's because people know a lot and they're like, oh geez, that's just gonna slide by the wayside like everything else. Right.
How I would respond to that is that I'm a little bit. I write at the Huffington Post. I write quite a fair amount on politics, and I'm probably I try not to be cynical. I try to use words of hope, but I am not. The social construct of political parties. The other element to that is that they will exploit whatever they have to exploit in order to gain power. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, something like the abortion issue, mm-hmm. which is, what part of a senator, representative, or judge, or whatever, president's life is dedicated to that issue? How much of the job is really about that issue compared to how much airplay it gets, and how many people just vote on that one single issue? And it's become, that issue is exploited for political power.
Right.
But most Christians, I think, are so emotionally attached to one side or the other that they just allow themselves to be exploited on that issue. And I think less and less, especially with under 30s and folks in my congregation, we try to actively learn how to suss it out and how to say, actually, I care about a lot of things. I care about that.
That's right.
issue, but I care about a lot of things. And in fact, my allegiance doesn't come to party, Republicans or Democrats or whatever. In fact, my allegiance isn't even first and foremost to America. I'm a Christian, and that's an absolutizing thing for me. Mm-hmm. And it's not really just a set of beliefs. Like you said, there's so much culture happening in things like worship or expressions mm-hmm. of faith. I'm talking about these are the people I belong to. And I just say that unabashedly. These are my people. Because how the tradition who have taught me, they've taught me how to be. It needs some help. it needs some help engaging in American culture in ways that won't allow it to just be exploited by people who don't care about what I care about, and who don't think what it means to be a human being is what I think it means to be a human being. Mm-hmm. And so, just the telos, the end in mind of the whole political situation, and really becomes American life, is things like, let's ensure our own prosperity. Let's ensure our own safety. And these are not the first concerns of a Christian. We're first concerned about mercy and justice and how we can organize our common life together so that we become images of God, the image of God.
Great. Okay, so that's Tim Suttle. Tim, hold on a minute. We just take a little break here because we have to do some technical things. So hold on 30 seconds here, and we'll be back with Tim Suttle. His book is called Public Jesus. This is a good time to listen to this, and then go online and look up Public Jesus or go to Tim Suttle. TimSuttle.com, is that right?
No, man, I am so not organized.
There's no .com.
You can find me out there. If you want to
go
see
to
my
Pagitt, go to
DougPagittRadio.com. That's where you should go.
That's
Paperback Theology. It's at Pathos.
Paperback Theology over at Pathos, and you can find a link to the book and all that. So, okay, so if you can hold on, Tim, we'll be back here just after a quick break.